Fimo, again,
Hey.
thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's beautiful. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here with you.
We are in our season of intentional living, and for the month of February, we celebrate Black History Month. And I've got to tell you, I'm very excited about this conversation. As uncomfortable as these conversations can get,
Mhm.
they're necessary. They're so necessary. And so the way I want to celebrate Black History Month is by engaging in somewhat uncomfortable conversations, getting
Mhm.
comfortable with the uncomfortable in order to inspire change,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
your deep desire to bring change is one of the reasons I need to have you again on my podcast. And another reason is because of your beautiful ability to articulate things in a way that's mindful. And I think that these particular conversations need people who are mindful, not angry or bring perspectives that may be skewed by ego or whatever. So again, I thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. I like everyone though. I just want to say disclaimer. I get angry.
Yeah. Yes.
I have to
That's
come back to
fine.
center.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not always mindful.
Your ability to come back to center is amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's getting better and
Yes.
better.
It's better. Yeah. So all relationships experience tension, and that tension needs to come out. And what we have learned to do is listen. And many people need to continue to learn to listen, because only when someone feels heard can we move forward and make the relationship stronger. And the same goes for a whole society, right? And Black people all over the world want to be heard, and the uncomfortable conversations need to continue, because through these difficult conversations and our ability to trust and truly listen, we will then begin to understand the person who's seeking to be heard and what he or she is going through. So I think these conversations definitely need to happen and to continue as individuals, but as organizations as well. So my first question to you is, when it comes to racial injustice, into particular towards Black people, how would you say can we start these difficult or uncomfortable conversations?
Oh, that's an easy question. Easy.
I know they get deep
Ooh,
real quick.
ooh. Maybe I should have asked you to send me the questions beforehand. I never do that because I like to just be in the moment, and I
Yeah,
don't want to think about it beforehand. Just trust what comes to me in the moment.
right.
When it comes to racial injustice, in North America particularly, there's such a long history, right? Like we didn't we didn't come here by choice. Like our ancestors didn't come here by choice. Now we have black people coming here by choice, but for those of us that are born on this side of the Atlantic, you know, um, and even on the other side in Europe, but those of us we didn't come here by choice. I think that's a huge. I can't say that enough. Like when you didn't, if your ancestors didn't come here by choice, and if your ancestors when they were brought to the Americas, you know, whether it's North America, Central, South America, the West Indies, they were forced to work. They had to endure horrible conditions, brutal conditions, families divided, auctioned off,
Yeah.
rape, abuse. You have to endure this for 400, almost 400 years.
Just
The
bringing
term,
that as an awareness is really
yeah,
powerful.
I don't know how we even get to justice when I think to this day, Canada, America still wants to believe the lie. Canada, when I say Canada this way, I'm not so much speaking. I'm speaking of like as all countries are creations, right? Like these are all
Yeah.
symbols. These are like there's in reality there's no such thing as borders, but we created these things, right? We rally under some flag, and I. But as Canadians, for the most part, and outside of the Black community, Indigenous community, and people of color that realize, hey, wait a minute. I have a role to play in this. Outside of these communities, I would say, generally speaking, people want to believe the lie that somehow this land is not built on rape and pillage. Like, we say, when we have meetings, we say this meeting is on unceded territory, right? And then we name the indigenous group that the territory it's on unceded territory. I'm like, well, that means it was stolen from them.
Yeah.
And so we say it, but I don't think it really registers we don't have a critical mass. I guess that's what I'm saying. There's still not a critical mass of people that can stay in this discomfort, like you talked about, long enough to say, well, what does that mean if this country is built on rape and pillage and on lies, on deceit, on signing treaties that you have no intention of honoring? What does that mean when this is, in terms of human history, this is like yesterday. This stuff is all yesterday. In terms of, if we look at human history, that would mean it's yesterday. So to say, oh, well, justice, we need racial justice, and I think first, people need to acknowledge the lie.
Yeah.
And that's the first step. I think the first step would be to acknowledge the lie.
Yeah.
And to sit with how that feels. How do you feel knowing what happened? Like, how do you feel? Yeah.
How would you bring that up in a conversation in order for it to be a smooth conversation that somebody would be like, yeah, I hear you. How do we start that conversation?
With a cup of tea.
Yeah, because when you think about it, Nazi Germany, there have been so many beautiful examples of how history is shown to the people in order for it to not be repeated. They show in South Africa, same thing. They'll say what happened and apologize for it in order to have a dialogue that is healthy, in my opinion. When you're able to bring it to the forefront and acknowledge that this was terrible and that let's work towards never making this happen again. But yet I feel like because there's no healing, because there's no admitting to the atrocities of it in some way.
Hey, listen, Canada, America wants to remain in its infantile state. When you're a child, you don't have to admit to things. And so that's why I say North America, in many ways, refuses to grow up. It still wants to believe this lie, a myth, and to be honest, I don't know how you start a conversation without acknowledging, well, how do you start a conversation to get people to acknowledge? I don't know. 2020 was a great opportunity, I thought, right? Remember that was, and I remember the media talking about this is a moment of reckoning. And they wanted to like embellish it. This is going to be like, this is a watershed moment, right? So you had, I think we had other killings before that, police killings, but George Floyd really, the whole world, right? You had Black Lives Matter, all this sort of stuff. It was, people were galvanized. But if you look at now what's happening, and then you have hirings that happen, let's have more diversity. But if you look at now what's happening, especially in the US, there's a strong backlash against the same things that 2020, when they were pushing towards, talking about what happened, talking about racial injustice, right? But now there's a strong backlash against that. And I don't know exactly what's happening, if that's the same situation in Canada, but I always say this. When something is happening in the US on a racial level, sometimes it's not the same in Canada, clearly. Population's different, everything. But that energy, so what I'm saying is to me, one thing I notice about Canada, there's a sense of, well, can't we just move on? So we have more diversity. We're working on raising those numbers. We're trying to hire, Indigenous women or Black women or Arab women. We're doing it. We've done it. Let's move on now. No one wants to really sit. I mean, let's be honest. No one enjoys sitting in discomfort, regardless of who you are. And I'll be the first to say I don't like to sit and feel uncomfortable. When someone comes to you with deep suffering, it's uncomfortable. But I've had to learn just to sit and hold space
Yeah,
for
that's
that
the
person.
part. That's the part right there where I want to know
Frustrating though.
how, yeah,
That's
how do we get people to understand that discomfort has to come? We don't live in a world where uncomfortable situations are not going to come to us on a daily
right,
basis sometimes for
right,
many people. So
right.
how
But
do we get
that's
people
a
to
hard question.
understand that? Yeah, it's a hard question.
I mean, because you're basically asking how do you get people to hold space for someone who's suffering, who's hurting.
Yeah,
Well, this is legit because suffering. I feel a lot of times it's egoic led, but someone who's like who's hurting. This is like real grievances, real. You're suffering. You're in pain, and so you would. I'm sure a child would say, "Well, if my friend is hurting, I should listen." I'm sure a child would, or they might not verbalize it. But when I see my nieces and nephews, when they hug each other, if someone right away but I find us as adults, well, who's hurting? Well, how long have they been hurting? Well, what was done at their job? Like we ask questions instead of just being like, okay, hold on, let me drop everything I think I know. Let me drop everything I think I believe. Let me drop all of that. To listen demands great vulnerability because you got to let go of that what you think you already know. You got to
and
let go of that idea of the other person. You
and
got to just
there, I think that's the answer right there. You just gave it. We have to be able to let go
yeah, and
of a
be
lot
vulnerable with each other.
and
You
be
know,
vulnerable with each other. Yeah.
that's not easy in a society where um, people won't admit to it, but we all have ideas of the other, whoever the other is, depend on the social circumstances.
Yeah.
And so how do we get past that? Like there's things that have been happening for a while now, like more conversations and more, you play together, you encourage that. And I think all those things are effective. But to do what you're asking, like to really get to a place where people holding space for each other, and that would mean, um, indigenous people, Black people, not having to um, necessarily say, well, this is give like all these bring all their receipts and stories. You can if you want, but our grievances, our pain is just believed. And when we say, hey, this is happening, hey, there's systemic racism happening here, and this is how it's impacting me, you're believed right away. Like I think like the hashtag believe her, right? Like we got to a place. It took a long time as a society. I'm not sure if we're fully there, but believe her when she comes forward and says something.
That's
This
right.
happened. Believe her.
Yeah. It's
Because why? Because history has shown that women have throughout history been mistreated, raped throughout history, right? So when a woman comes forward, now is it a perfect system? No, because you might have times where there's two sides to a story, right? But still, I think that hashtag is so powerful. Powerful. Believe her,
yeah.
and and I think we're still like you and I. We can say, hey, there's some racism here. We have to have proof.
Yeah.
The onus is on us. And like Tanya, I don't understand how the onus is on us when we live in a society that's racist. They should have to prove that they're not racist. We shouldn't have
Yeah.
to prove, but we still have to prove it.
I admit it's a heavy, heavy question. And I do believe we're going in the right direction with people all over the place kind of doing their parts. Well, we'll talk about that a bit more, but the conversations just have to keep going. I think we have to find
Yeah.
a way, to get the conversations keep going, and not just amongst each other as Black people, but amongst everyone, because it is very necessary. We definitely
Yeah.
need. I was listening to a podcast, and it was kind of the inspiration to me doing this series in February, called "A Bit of Optimism" with Simon Sinek, and he was having a conversation with David Harris about how to have difficult conversations. It's like I said, what inspired me to do this. And in that episode, his guest David Harris recalled a conversation he had with a white colleague of his, um, and So all of the Black people in his company gathered together to take a picture. And his white colleague asked, would it be perceived as exclusionary if a white person did the same thing? So he responded, well, the question should be, why do you, as a Black employee, feel the need to take the photos? Forever, we've been the minority. So being in the majority as the white person, you don't ever have to ask about the legitimacy of being there or feel like you're an exception. So when you see Black people who are in the minority in a huge successful company, chances are they're celebrating each other, right? So they're celebrating the progress of a nation, acknowledging how far they've come, excited about the fact that
Right.
we all arrived at the same place, the serendipity of it all, So it isn't an insult, is what he was saying, against you, but rather a celebration of what they have accomplished, the Black people have accomplished. So I believe there is an ignorance through lack of exposure, and a lack of empathy and being able to truly put yourself in someone else's shoes. And I don't say ignorance in a bad, negative way. You don't feel bad when you don't know trigonometry.
Right. Just lack of knowledge. Right.
Lack of
Right.
knowledge, exactly.
Right.
So my question is, in your experience, would you say there's a willingness to learn when it comes to other people's culture? Is there a way we can get people genuinely interested in learning?
Oh, I mean, that's a tricky question because I think with some people, of course, like I can't speak on, there's people that generally want to learn about other people, other ways of being, other ways of knowing. You have people like that. You also have people that we live at a time now where it's not fully acceptable, like to just be a bigot, like, or at least publicize it. You can have it, you can be a bigot, but you can't, like, and to just be like, well, I don't want to know about anyone else that's not like me. That's not cool. So
Yeah.
you have to like, I mean, we saw it during 2020. How many people put the Black Lives Matter stuff up?
Yeah.
Are those people are they keeping that same energy today?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure a lot of Black authors, their readership went up during that time. Black books were being sold like crazy. Any book about race but it was a moment. And this is something that's not just limited to race, right? This is in general.
Yes.
Are you going to be interested in learn about people that you classify as other for this time, for this training? Like, would they have racial sensitivity training? They have these training courses. Like, is it just okay, I'm going to learn this for now, or is this a lifelong thing? I'm interested in people that it's a lifelong journey of exploration, of discovery, of insight. I'm interested in that. If it's just for the moment because, well, you need to for your work, or if it's just a moment thing, then I do question your sincerity.
Yeah.
And I question a lot of people's sincerity on it. To be honest, I and I don't believe in forcing anyone to do anything. Put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would it be better if we all were a bit more empathetic to one another? If we all took the time to learn a bit about each other? Sure. Is that going to happen on a critical mass scale? Where I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
think
sure.
our education system really needs to step up in this case in order to help this situation, because at a very young age, you have to learn the true history in order
Right.
to, because when you're so young, which I'm going to get into that in another question, but when you're young, it's just love. There's no, so when it's until the belief systems start getting screwed up with,
Right.
then
Right.
there's all kinds of false narratives in your head because of what you're hearing. So the education system needs to step up in that way. Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to go on a rant
Yeah.
about this. I mean, my thing is, like, I seriously, as someone who used to be a teacher, I don't understand let's be clear. Can we get clear on what the the point is. Like, so the child goes there. Is it like, is it basically just daycare so that the parents can go and work? Like, what is the, because technically speaking, I hope we're not still thinking we gotta like shove in all this information to kids. Like we have Google now and stuff. Like, so whatever the person needs to know, do they have to know it in their head? Do they need to memorize all these things in their head? Like, or are we teaching actual skills? But fundamentally, I think it's criminal to go to school at 5 or 6 or 7 and 8 and 9, 10 and not have a class. I'm not talking about like have someone like myself come in and do like extracurricular activities. I'm talking about a class where it's all about the journey inward, discovering who you are. I don't understand how we don't have a class, like a class. I'm talking about English, French, self. And
Yes.
that class from early on. Why? Because I've yet to meet anyone that has graduated from high school, university, whatever, and hasn't had some kind of like identity issues, crisis. Some who am I? What am I doing? These existential questions that we've been asking for millennia, right? I haven't had anyone that hasn't gone on that asked the question, then be like, I don't feel good about myself, or what should I like? These are all things that, well, then at 20 something, you gotta go and try to figure it out. Well, what
It,
if bit by bit you're young and you're already on that, you're already going inward, you're having times to think and pause and
it's
man, like come
mind
on.
boggling to me as well, self and also helping others. I think both of those things need to be in class along with finance, if you ask me. The stuff that's
Yeah,
necessary for a
right,
human being to go
right.
out there and be successful. The number of people that I've heard who have committed suicide
Mm,
is staggering,
mm,
and especially now. And these are like it's people that I don't know personally, but I know the person who, you know what I mean? It's close
yeah,
enough. It's too
yeah, yeah,
close.
yeah. Oh, it's
And so it is it's absolutely, our school system has to step up in a big way for us to be able to, benefit in the long run, I believe. And clearly you
um,
believe the same.
yeah, yeah, yep.
Let's break down the word privilege and what it truly means. I think that Amy Cooper will go down in history as one of the people who was able to allow us to witness privilege in such an unapologetic way, raw, real way. And the fact that she was able to assume that her whiteness combined with her quote unquote feeling threatened would automatically result in a not so favorable outcome for a Black man. And it's a Black man who was simply asking her to obey the law, by the way. It was astonishing, but at the same time, not so surprising, if that makes
Mhm,
sense. She
mhm,
knew that the assumption would be that this man is causing harm, be it emotional, physical, or whatever it is, to a white woman. And she knew that she would be believed and he wouldn't. That whole situation was so telling of what goes on a day-to-day basis,
mhm,
that she would default to that so easily was quite scary.
mhm,
To be honest, I think of my son, and growing up and what he could face. And another fact that was so, I don't know
mhm,
even how to express it, so special is that they shared the same family name. you know
mhm,
um so the likelihood of them being linked, if
right,
we go down a couple of generations, they could very well have even been family. So that's in and of itself is kind of mind-blowing. But
mhm,
how would you say that word privilege can be expressed in a way that is truly understood and not just
mhm,
thrown around?
hmm. Well, real quick on the family thing, like and that's I'm glad that you brought that up. They could have been family. We're all family. At the end of
Yes,
the day,
yes,
we're all like long distance cousins, but we're all family. And I think it's important to remember that. I just think it's important to really say that, like, like we are. It's one family.
yeah,
And that's why going back to school real quick. When you examine the self and you spend time, you start realizing the ego creates a self itself, a separate self, and that's important to do different things. But you also start to explore that oneness, that you have that oceanic view where you start to realize, wow, I I am, you are, we are. There's no me without you. Wow. And once that happens, naturally, I want to see you thrive. I want to see the best for you. Are you hurting? How can I alleviate some of your suffering, some of what you're going through? Naturally, that comes about. It's not even like sometimes I'm amazed at the conversations that people have. I'm like, well, you're skipping a few steps. Let's get back to how do you how do you see yourself? Do you really see yourself as being completely separate from that person? And if you do, well, it's gonna be forced.
Look into
All right.
his eyes, you know?
Yeah, it's gonna be forced. That you're gonna be like, okay, let me be empathetic. Let me,
Yeah.
But if so, but privilege, you know, yeah, it's such a term because when we were younger, I never heard the term white privilege when I was young.
Yeah. Same.
Like I knew the word privilege, I knew the word white, but I never heard it put together. So now, like when people say, "Oh, white privilege," I don't know what the official definition is, but um, I when I think privilege, I just think um, if you're on a road and we say that car is privilege, it means it gets to drive however it wants to. It gets to maybe swerve and go here. Maybe it has a privileged lane, so it has to get from point A to point B. The course is easier for that car. That's how I look at privilege.
That's a
It,
great analogy. Exactly
I'm
how
not
it
sure if
is.
it's accurate. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's accurate, but that's how I look at privilege. So when someone says like white privilege or privileged upbringing, I just look at it where it was a bit easier, And when you brought up the example, I don't want to go back there, but the black colleagues who took a picture together, I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, they're celebrating because chances are, chances are they just had their level of difficulty to get there was
Yeah.
probably more difficult than their colleagues.
Yeah.
Like just chances are. And I don't think so. Yeah, privilege is a reality. I think now people realize, right? Do
I
people
don't,
realize it?
this is why I asked the question, because I wonder how much people do realize it, and how much when we actually talk about it, how much people will cringe and be like, oh, there they go again with that privilege. You
With
know what
that,
I mean? Like, I feel like there's still a lot of that. Let's not get it twisted. Many people don't believe that it's even there. And so for us to kind of have a conversation about it and express
right.
these situations that happen, it's somebody gave an analogy once about, well, this is how Black America feels, or Black people feel. You see how if there's a fire and there's only one house on the neighborhood is on fire, wouldn't you go and help that house? Like, wouldn't you jump and go to that house and help that? We feel like that the house is on fire and there's no help around,
Yeah, because all houses matter.
all houses matter. All houses matter.
I try not to laugh at people. Like that's my, I like, like when I was young, j'étais vraiment baveux. Like I had that in me. I had that energy in me.
Yeah, arrogance.
Like like I try not to laugh at people. I'm like, but I'm like sometimes I hear something I'm like, yo, you tripping? Like you crazy?
Yeah,
Like
it's hard not to sometimes. And I know it's not a laughing matter. We're not trying to downplay, what it is. It's just that as people of color, we understand sometimes the atrocities that come out of people's mouths sometimes, when we're like, wait, but it's real. Like, the comments you hear and you're like, but it's real. It really does happen. Anyhow,
it
yeah,
happens.
it's a
So
shedding a bit of light.
yeah, but privilege. We yeah, privilege. I don't know. I mean, do people recognize privilege? Like because there's certain times where I'm in a position of I don't know if it's privilege, but more power.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not sure of like there's times when as a man, I'm in a situation where I might have more power.
Yeah.
Um, Generally speaking, no, it doesn't work that way. But I'm talking about there are times, as But and I recognize that, I try to be, cognizant of, oh, okay, now how can I use this? That's how I look at it. Like, okay, if you have privilege, well, how can you use it to bring some other people with you, like
Yeah, that's a
to
good
make it
point
easier
too.
for other people, like if I'm in a room and people are focused on what I have to say, well, I know there's some people that know more than me, a lot more than me, and so, hey, you listen to me. We really need to listen to is this sister over here, this brother over here, that person. Like, isn't that all we're asking for? Like,
Yeah.
like I, I'm a writer, and how many times I've heard white writers or creatives talk about how, well, we should be able to tell any story you want. You can tell any story you want, sure. But my thing is this: if you're going to go to South America, you can go to Africa, you can go to Southeast Asia, and you want to tell a story about some tribe or some group of people, right? That's cool. But a lot of times the people there haven't had the opportunity to even tell their own stories yet.
Yeah.
Like, like, and so it's just going to be another white person telling a story about and listen, the Poisonwood Bible, I loved it, written by a white during Congo. And I loved it. No, it was a great book. I'm not saying, but what I am saying is, hey, why don't you use some of your privilege to like open some doors up for other people, right? Isn't that what it's about? Maybe
Yeah,
it's just, you know,
and it's not asking for like a hand me down or for what I mean,
the handout. Yeah,
the
yeah.
handout. It's asking to acknowledge the fact that many voices have been silenced for
Okay. Yeah,
and
yeah.
continue to be silenced for. So it's just an understanding and awareness of that, and being able to, like you say, bring up your brother, bring up your sister, because we are
Yeah.
all one.
Right, right. Be like, hey, like especially you got the big spotlight on you. So
Yes.
like, like move it over here, move it because as an artist, as a creative person, as if you probably know some writers in Chad that are doing it, but just haven't had the exposure.
Yeah.
So and you see people do that. Some people do that,
Yeah.
but how many don't? Like, and
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, use it. Like, you can't like you have privilege. You can't be like, no, I don't want it. No,
Mm,
you have it.
you have it. That's
You're
it.
in the privileged car. You're going down. You
Yeah.
have it. So you might as well use it.
And it's not to say to just give it to any person of color off the street. There are so many talented people of color. So you have an abundance of people to choose from, if
Yeah,
you open your eyes and,
yeah,
go out there and actually communicate with enough people, you will
oh,
find
yeah.
many.
I
Yeah.
mean, like, it, I'm at a point where I'm always like, listen, um, any person of color should get it. I say this because we went to a birthday party last summer at a friend's house, and it was really nice. It was a chalet on the water. It was beautiful. And you know how they got the house? It was passed down in the
Mm-hmm.
family.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Generational wealth. Yeah.
Wow. My thing is, well, and people can say, well, that's history, but hold on. If one person starts with $50, the other person starts, they don't even have $50. They're not even
Negative.
considered human. You're never gonna catch it. You're gonna have Oprah because I always like to point out, oh, but you have LeBron James, you have Oprah, you have oh, whoop de doo, like okay,
Well, let's
bravo,
look at the statistics. Yeah.
yeah, like what are you talking about? Like, so it's old school to say this, but the playing fields have never been leveled to this day. They still haven't been leveled to this day, and so I don't know how to go on. Like I'm not even sure how to level the playing field because you can't talk about reparations. People get nervous, they get tight, they start stuttering and stuff. You get the sweats and you know what I mean. Like you can't talk about reparations. You can't. It's just not in the budget. Like where are we gonna get the money from? Where did you get your money from?
Yeah.
Where did you get your money? Do you think you're the only hardworking people? Like my thing is, like, do you really think that you're the only hardworking people? Like you don't think other people work hard? Oh, but that's where the stereotypes comes in. oh, but you guys probably, black people lazy, criminal activity. Like I can go down the list and break down all of them. Like, well, why the need to criminalize black people? Well, because you criminalize black people, then you take away all the rights, particularly the right to vote, the right to like have agency in society. If so it's just I'm like no. All
And
these big families that they talk about, the Rockefellers, the DuPonts in Canada, Molson, let's go back and look at their history.
and that's what we mean by systemic as well.
Yeah.
It is
So
far. It's and like you say, it's considering human history. It's yesterday.
it's yesterday,
It was
exactly.
just, it is so fresh.
Right.
So for us to think that it's gonna
Yeah.
how we're dealing with it now is going to repair or heal anything, something's got to change.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. Okay, so children are beautiful children before they
Yes.
get their belief systems tampered with, can't
Yes.
understand why there's even an issue. Like, why would it even bother you that I'm playing with this person? I
Mhm.
believe that as children, racism is very confusing. They only know love.
Mhm.
So it's our responsibility to articulate conversations in a way that will help them understand what's going on and how to face racism, and
Mhm.
how to make situations better. So, how would you say, and I know you don't have children, but you are an amazing uncle.
Mhm.
How would
Oh, thank you.
I just know you are. How would you say do we talk to our children about this?
Oh.
Because I'm honestly asking all of my guests in February because my children are 9 months, 6 years, and 8 years.
Oh,
And I haven't had real conversations about it because it's
yeah,
still very,
yeah.
my son is extremely sensitive, very
Mhm.
sensitive. He doesn't watch, like, we don't watch the news in the house. I don't watch news anyways because I find
Yeah.
it's just too much.
Yeah.
Um, but to start a conversation, because that
Yeah.
time's gonna come. Like, he's 8. Like,
Well, we last week, it was last Monday was Martin Luther King Jr. Day,
yes.
and so we had as a family, all my sisters, um, one of my nephews asked my sister, "Hey, are we gonna have like a Zoom for Martin Luther King Jr. Day?" He's like
Wow. How old
he's
is he?
not even 7 yet. He's not even
Wow.
7. And so one of my older sisters was like, "Yeah." She put together a PowerPoint, and then we that evening we had a meeting, a gathering for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It was great. He learned about all the kids learned about Martin Luther King Jr. We asked questions. What was he fighting for? What can you learn from his life?
Next
And
time,
then
people invite me to these things.
I will. It was really good. It was really good.
Yeah, that
And
sounds
funny enough, I'll continue the story, but funny enough, afterwards, I enjoyed it so much. I was like, we should do this every month. Like, we pick like a topic, and we
amazing.
really, because the kids had questions. The kids were really engaged. So
Oh, include me,
and
please. Yes,
I'll let you know. I got you.
that's
So
amazing. Yeah.
and so it was beautiful. And then at one point, one of my nephews, because one of my sisters talked about how she wasn't treated fairly because of her color of her skin. Because, like, because of the color of the
Yeah.
skin. Then my older sister said, as a principal, she doesn't feel like she's treated, being a black woman, she's not treated equally. And I talked about what I experienced. And then my nephew, in childlike innocence, he says, I have a question. Well, I want to know, what does it feel like to be treated fairly? He didn't say it like in that exact way, but that was what he's getting at. Like, he said it like,
Yes.
what does it feel like? What does it, he did say feel, to be treated like fairly, equally. And I was like, I
That's
don't
amazing.
know. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know. And none of the adults can answer that question. Like, we never thought that we would be treated equally. Like, in the back of, I think most people, I can't speak for all black people, but there's kind of an understanding, we know chances are we're not going to be the
Oh
first people
man,
considered for a job, or the
that's
first, no matter how qualified we are, we're not going to be considered like, chances are we're going to have to work a little harder. Chances are we're going to have to, that's just in the back of our mind. We kind of know
that's
that.
so deep for a child to ask that and for those feelings to come up in
Exactly.
one of those adults. Because as you said it, I am thinking the same thing. Like,
I don't
I've
know.
never, I've, to be honest, growing up in Ville Saint Laurent, very multicultural, I've never
Oh yeah,
felt
yeah,
like people were being racist towards me, but there was always that understanding based on conversations you've heard your adult,
oh yeah,
people around you have. And then as an adult, then you realize, oh yeah, it
yeah,
exists because you feel it. So I
yeah.
totally understand what you say. Like in the back of our mind, we're always thinking because of the color. Like my husband, he'll go to the bank. He can't wear his cap and his hoodie.
Oh no,
Now he
no,
does.
no!
Doesn't
You
care,
cannot do
but he
that.
will feel the difference
Right,
when he's
right,
wearing his work clothes and when he's wearing. But regardless, even in work clothes, the color of his skin is still black. So he knows that he's going to be treated a certain way in the back of his head, anyways.
right.
And it's sad.
Oh, any black person who's gone to university, if they tell me they didn't feel it, they probably weren't paying attention. Because
Yes.
I don't know how many times where I'm wearing the same clothes, like this white kid's wearing the same clothes as me. Hey, people, you have like that hip hop thing going on. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? Really? Like there's a lot going on, and there's a lot going on there,
Puddle.
and so that's why, like, you know, you're I mean, in Montreal, let's keep it super real. In Montreal, I don't know if it's still that way, but I'm speaking about the 90s, like 90s, 2000s, right? Like you want to go to a club that's not black, or even if it's black, but it's not like a mixed club, and you're a black guy. What are your chances of getting in?
So crazy. Yeah. That just brought me back to my days of, you know,
You're trying to go to a club. What are your chances of getting in? Why do you have to tuck in your shirt?
yeah.
Oh, because you're supposed to be, you might be part of a gang. There's a certain, like all these things used to, as to how pissed I used to get. I'm like, I'm not standing in line for what?
Yeah.
And, but this whole dress code thing, do you know how liberating it was when got out to Asia and I go to parties with yoga pants and tank tops on? I walk in a club. I'm not a threat.
It's so, yeah, it's
Get
crazy. I
up.
remember those days clearly where, the brothers or the cousins or whatever. Oh no, I couldn't get in. And you're inside because as a girl, it's a bit easier and you're in a basketball team. We always got in everywhere. But then you hear about the people you're going with,
Trust me.
they're still outside being
Trust me.
interrogated
Trust me. You're not
and then
getting
sent
in.
home. Yeah.
It's You're not getting in. They'll find some reason you're not getting in. And they got the memo. Hey, and so that's why I say, well, treat it equally, treat it fairly, fairly. I don't expect to be honest, I don't expect to be treated fairly because history has shown me, my personal history, and then history of my parents and their parent has shown me that we're not treated fairly. So
Yeah.
I'm not gonna live in some dream. But in that moment,
Yeah.
I'm looking at my nephew and I'm like, wow, I love it. I love the fact that he's not jaded yet.
Yeah.
So how to protect that?
Yes.
How to give a child information,
Yeah.
but to also protect their innocence.
Yes. That's it.
That's the balance. And I'm not a parent, so I don't have to.
I'm still asking you the question. How did that, or maybe give me maybe examples of certain conversations that may have happened in that beautiful interaction of learning about Dr. Martin Luther King,
Yeah.
in cases where you may have been kind of teaching the children there certain things about how to conduct yourself or
Yeah,
not conduct yourself, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I thought it was good. Like I like one of my sisters she did the PowerPoint, so she did a lot of the talk and then the questions. I like the fact that like our dad is from Birmingham, Alabama. So he, so my sister's like, "Where's Grandpa from?" They're like, "Oh, Alabama." So they start connecting the dots. Oh, that's in Alabama. Oh, this is like our history. This is not like some faraway thing now.
right.
You know what I mean? And so to see that connection, now there's a part of me that's like, I wish they didn't have to know about these
Yeah,
things. You know what I mean? I'm sure you feel that way. Like, why
absolutely.
can't they just stay in? Why can't they just stay innocent?
I
Like
think
I
that's
always say, I
right.
lost my.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
right. Why can't they like? I lost my innocence when I was in grade 2 or something, when someone called me a neg. Like
Mm.
the minute someone called me that, I was like, well, what's that? Like
Yeah,
I'm less than
exactly.
you? 'Cause I'm less than you. You know, my parents never told me I was less than anyone. They never told me I was better than anyone. Never told me I was less than anyone.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was interesting that, and I guess you know, you lose your innocence, okay. But for me, I do look at a child. I'm like, well, it's beautiful that they just are, and they're not concerned about the race thing, the class thing, because this class thing is serious. Not concerned about all this gender stuff. Like, well, you know, people are like, well, why do they have to complicate things with the pronouns? I bet you a kid would just they'll learn the kid would learn the pronoun, and be like, oh, you want
Easily.
they? Okay, they,
Okay.
I got you.
Yeah.
They, I got you.
No questions asked. Yeah.
Got you. You know what I
This is
mean?
why it has to begin at this very young age in the schools. They spend so much time in school, you know. We should
Yeah.
be helping out the school system and putting in our 2 cents, but
Mm.
it should be
Yeah.
there, you know.
Right. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. You know.
We are back and Cameron is with us.
Best interview ever. Oops! I spilled my tea.
Oh
This
no.
There wasn't much tea left. You know. Um, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of tea left, but it's
Okay.
there. It's
Okay.
there.
To be wiped, to be continued with the tea and the wiping. Okay. So, my last question for you is how do we all become of service in our own way?
Mm, mm. You know, it's something I ask myself fairly often. You know, even though, like, yes, I have a nonprofit that's designed to like create meditation programs and to really help the community heal, right? Communities of people heal. But I still ask myself that question because that's like big picture, you know, that's like, but what can I do in this moment? Because this moment is really all we have. Like, you know, we we can talk about all these things we're going to do, oh, you know, next year, but at the end of the day, this moment is all we have. Cameron knows that this moment is all we have, and in this moment, what can I do to be of service to humanity? What can I do? And and you know, this might sound cheesy, but I honestly believe that if I can go inward and bring out that which is empathetic, compassionate, loving, that which is non-judgmental, that which is patient, if I can bring that out of me, then I feel like I'm going to impact my immediate environment, and that is helping to bring about a different making a change. It is making a change, small, but it is making a change. It's a little ripple, but everyone can do that. So to me, I really feel it's about showing up in your best, at your best, whatever your best is in that moment. Your best might not be the same every day. It might not be the same every moment. It's not. But as long as you show up as your authentic self, um, with as much, I keep going back to like patience and kindness and empathy and compassion and non-judgment, um, and with an openness to what this moment has. You know, you show up in this moment with an energy of surrender. I want to surrender to whatever happens in this moment. You know, and knowing that when you're vulnerable, you're not weak. You're actually very courageous, and so owning your vulnerability, sharing your vulnerability, you know, that sort of encourages other people to be vulnerable too. You know, and to know that everything that's happened to you, or even if you want to say everything that's happened to your community, is not your fault, but it is your responsibility now to do something. It is your responsibility. And don't try not to see that as a burden, but see it as an opportunity, you
Yes.
know. And so I, yeah, I think there's a lot we can do on a micro level,
Yes.
moment by moment, that will never make the news, that will never get you an award, perhaps, but those, to me, in this moment, you holding Cameron is everything. You're impacting the world, in my opinion. You breastfeeding, that's everything. And I'm not just talking about mothers, I'm talking about whatever you do, but you do it with all your heart, with all your attention. You're fully present in that moment. When you honor the present moment, you're honoring life itself. That's what life happens here. So, and when you honor life, your life, I'm life, that everything is life. The tree is life. It's all life. It's a life force within all of us. And when you do that, oh, that's magical.
I
That's
could not
magical.
agree more. Yeah. And therein lies the importance of self work,
Mm,
going inward and truly being able to be present, because
yeah,
if you start
yeah,
doing that on a daily basis, and
right,
it makes it so much easier. After a while, it's like second nature. You catch yourself just feeling the water go down your hands when you wash your hands, as many
right,
times that we have to wash our hands now, or you know just the
right,
impact is huge for the people around you after that, because then
right.
you're able to be vulnerable, like you say, and
Hmm.
there are the conversations that we want, the real authentic vulnerable conversations, and I think it makes it easier. So it kind of ties everything into the conversation we were having on how to even start
Right.
conversations that are hard. It's be vulnerable,
Yeah.
at your time, and your time is when you've done some self work, just a little bit of self work, right? Don't you feel like
Yeah.
you
Make a big difference. I
makes
think
a
it makes
huge
a big difference.
difference?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I think so. You
Yeah.
know,
This
yeah.
is why I have you on my, you're probably going to be one of those repeat guests on the every
Yeah,
couple months. And
it's
now here's
honor.
people.
Yeah.
But
Your listeners, your viewers will be like, again?
they will appreciate it as much as I do. Thank you very much again for your time, Fimo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's
Thank
been
you
beautiful. Beautiful.
for all of the work that you do as well. Thank you very much.
Oh, Cameron is saying something.
Yeah, he's saying something with as he's drinking his milk. So I think he's just enjoying it.
I love it. I love it.
Thanks, Fimo.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, Cameron.
Bye. As always, I thank you for tuning in. These episodes are meant to be of massive value to you, and so I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, all I ask in return is for you to give it a thumbs up, give it some love in the reviews, share with one or two friends whom you know will benefit from hearing this content. Check out the links in the description. Continue to lead with empathy, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Many blessings.